Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one. I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Let's say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues!
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello and welcome to Citizen Team, the podcast where it's a new year and we're super optimistic about it. Yeah. I'm Karen Peterson, joined by Lauren Humphreys-Brooks.
I love the confident way you said optimistic. You're super optimistic.
Totally. Yeah. What could go wrong?
Well, you know what? Right now I'm just like, okay, sure. Yeah, whatever. Let's see what else happens. Yeah.
I saw a post on Instagram the other day where someone was making a 2025 bingo card, and I was like, oh, no, I don't have the strength.
No, don't do that. Don't start it's not going to be on your bingo card. I'm sorry. It just isn't.
I feel like that's exactly why they made it, so that every day they could be like, well, this wasn't on my bingo card.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How was your New Year's?
My New Year's was pretty good. Yeah, I'm back in New York. It's nice to be home. I did have a good Christmas break. Kind of came back to New York a little early because I was beating the snowstorm that was hitting upstate. And I was just like, I'm leaving because I am not driving in the blinding snow. Thank you, though.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I don't blame you.
So it's nice. It's nice to be back in New York City. Went to go see the film that we're going to talk about next week, Nosferatu, which I am really looking forward to discussing with you. And yeah, so it's been a nice couple of days so far.
Awesome.
How about you?
My New Year's was it was pretty fun. So some people might be surprised to hear that I play Dungeons and Dragons, and
nerd.
I am.
Nerd.
I love it.
Such a nerd, nerdier than me. My God.
I'm actually going today to my monthly game. But on New Year's Eve, with my group, we decided to do just a one shot. So you can, a campaign that you can finish in just a couple of hours. And I ran my very first one. I've never done it before. I've played a bunch, but I've never actually run a campaign. And so I did, and it was so much fun. And yeah, I found one online. I didn't make it up myself, but it was like a little murder mystery one, and it was a good time. So that's how I spent my New Year's Eve, and now I have that punch on my nerd card. So yay. And then I've also just been watching tons of movies because it's award season. I'm in a group that votes, and I had to submit my ballot, so I was trying to catch up on stuff. And I also write for an awards site, so I had a lot of things I just needed to know what the kids are talking about. So yeah, so it's just been a lot of movies, and I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I did come down with something. So I've got drugs and things now. So fun stuff.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's apparently so the doctor said I might have had a virus at one point, but she thinks it's more likely just all the crap in the air just kind of got to me and caused a storm in my system. So so fun. So yeah, been trying to navigate that. I'm not coughing this morning, which is great.
Yay.
Yeah, 2 days ago I was like, maybe I should cancel the podcast for this weekend, but then yesterday I was doing much better. So
well, good. So I'm looking forward to chat on our first podcast of 2025.
I know, I'm so excited. It's funny because there's a lot of things to not be hopeful about with this year, but I think that there's just like every year, there's also going to be good things that will come too. So, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about movies again all year long. So,
yes.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about movies from last year.
last year, all
Yeah.
of several days
All
ago.
of, yes. So we wanted to start off this episode, something we haven't done in a while, which is to just talk about the movies that we've been watching lately. Not all of them. I don't know about you. I've been watching so many movies. Like I think I logged 30 movies in the week between Christmas and New Year's, something like that. Maybe not quite 30, but it was a lot.
If you look at my letterbox, so I think that I watched a total of 275 movies last year, which is actually low for me. That was like I've seen people who are like, oh, I watched 1,000 movies. Just like, how the fuck did you do that? Like that's what?
Yeah.
But usually
it's crazy.
Like the past few years I've been averaging more like 300, 350. So it's been on the low end for me. But if you look at my letterbox, you can see where my Hitchcock challenge, I was suddenly like, oh shit, I better finish watching this. Otherwise I'm not going to get an A+ in Hitchcock, which I need to get. And I did get an A+ in Hitchcock, so that's all right. But you could like see the point at which I suddenly went, oh shit, because it's just like nothing but Hitchcock basically.
For me, it was I the last couple of years I've had I've watched a lot. In fact, I think during 2020 I hit over 400 movies, which was my highest. And a couple weeks ago I went, oh man, I'm not even going to hit 350 this year. And then I went, wait, I can do that. I have time. So I did. But then it's funny because if you look at mine, like between the 29th and the 31st, I watched a couple of short films. The Oscar shortlisted short films, because
I see
those are
cheating.
I was not cheating. They are still films. They count.
So I'm just gonna watch short films. I could watch 1,000 films in a year if I was just watching short films.
Well, and honestly, I think that's what probably a lot of those people who watch 1,000 movies do. It's a lot of short films. So, but yeah, no, all the ones that I watched, I think all of them are on the short list. So I was gonna have to watch them anyway. So I was like, well, I'll just do this and bump up my stats a little bit at the same time. So, because it's funny because even though my total number of movies was a little bit lower than it has been the last couple of years, the hours of watching movies was like at the same or higher. So, because I do watch a lot of short movies, apparently. So anyway, yeah, so let's jump in and talk about some things that we've been watching. So why don't we start with your Hitchcock challenge? You gave yourself a challenge in 2024. How did it go?
It went great. Like I said, I got an A+ in Hitchcock. I got the A+ because I also watched his 2 French propaganda shorts, which are actually, it's funny because you just say, oh, it's the Hitchcock challenge or whatever, and there's definitely some not great films in the mix. But actually, the 2 propaganda shorts, which I'd seen before but not for a very, very long time, are actually quite good. They're very like one of them is the same story told from 2 different perspectives. Another one is kind of like this flat, it's an interesting sort of flashback structure. So he does some really interesting things in films that are basically like, we hate the Nazis, go France, essentially, right? And they're very recognizable as propaganda shorts, but they're quite well made and sort of the kind of thing that you would actually expect from Hitchcock. So that's how I got an A+. Otherwise, I would just have had an A, because I did watch all of his existent feature films. No, I did not watch number 13, which was never completed. I did not watch The Mountain Eagle, which doesn't exist. And I also did not watch the Apocrypha, which are kind of the films that are questionable about. He may have directed some of them, may have been an assistant director on them, but are kind of like major question marks, because sort of in his filmography. So I watched the undoubted Hitchcock films, and it was a good experience. Like most of them, some of them I've seen multiple times. I like watch them every year anyways. Others I haven't seen in a very, very long time, including some of the British Silence, like The Farmer's Wife, which is not a particularly good film, but has some really entertaining bits in it. which I quite liked, and particularly, and the reason why I basically did a speed run at the end of the year was because I resisted watching Frenzy for so long. And I had not seen Frenzy. I realized I had not seen Frenzy in maybe since I was a teenager, even at least all the way through. And it is one of those films that has like been sort of embedded in my psyche. And definitely, I first saw it when I was 14 years old, something like that, and I was way too young to see this film. And I think that my parents didn't realize what it was. And then they were also at a point where, they were like, oh, yeah, Lauren loves Hitchcock, like, so she should watch Hitchcock films. They had no clue what Frenzy actually entailed. And then we watched it, and I think that they probably regretted it, but you couldn't really stop me at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but rewatching it actually as, a mature adult and everything, it kind of reinforced for me exactly how, like, it is a brilliant film. I think it's a late career masterpiece for him. And it is the second to last film before Family Plot. And it really is just like, in a lot of ways, it's this combination of a lot of the different thematics throughout his career, in a really disturbing, but also very funny and very sort of lurid and entertaining way. I think that it does so many fascinating things, including the reason why this film bothered me so much is because it includes a very not a really explicit, but a very visceral rape sequence.
Yeah.
That doesn't last very long, but is so like realistic in a certain sense. He doesn't show much, which is one of the things that Hitchcock is very good at, is about implying horror without showing you too much of it. But it's one of those things that just it's shocking to watch in a lot of ways. And at the same time is just like colors the rest of the film, I think. And it is at the same time incredibly necessary. I don't think he could have made this film without including that sequence. Like, he couldn't have pulled back on it, basically. But it's so well done in a way that only Hitchcock can do it. And it just draws together all of these really interesting thematics about violence and sexuality and masculinity as well, patriarchy. It's just, I really do think it's one of his best films, and I'm very, very glad I got to rewatch it. And also kind of got past some of the things that I think scared me and really kind of embedded in me when I was a kid, to be more of an adult and be like, okay, I can actually watch this now and appreciate it and understand it.
Yeah, it's funny because that actually ended up being the first movie I watched on New Year's Day. And I'm not sure why I chose that one. Oh, no, I do know why.
This is quite a thing.
I was gonna say there was a reason. But obviously, I mean, I've been following your Hitchcock journey in throughout the year, and we had talked about Frenzy and before and after you watched it. And then it was like on Criterion, and I thought I hadn't seen it before. Like, I knew a lot about the movie, but I thought I'd been avoiding watching it. So I started it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. And so I started watching it, and about like within the opening couple of minutes, I was like, wait, I have seen this movie before. And I looked, and I actually watched it just 2 years ago. So I don't know why I thought I hadn't, but probably because there's still some essential Hitchcocks that I've missed. And I just thought this was one of them. But yeah, it is. It's very well done. And I think, I mean, obviously he's had a lot of movies that involve murder and plots and things, but I think this is one of the ones that really, especially for his later career, I think this is one of the ones that really puts you in the shoes of the victim at certain points. And also like in that one scene that you were talking about, like a little bit, not in the point of view of the murderer, but definitely right alongside him in a way that a lot of his other films don't do. And it does make this very intense, very emotional scene. that's not just about like, oh my gosh, is this guy going to get away with it? But it really puts you into the heart of like the horror of the moment. And yeah, it's so well done. Very, very good. The one that I can't watch, like, and I've seen it more than once, but I just am like, I can't watch this again, is Marnie. And that's the one that I'm like, no, thank you.
It's interesting because I rewatched Marnie as well, and Marnie is another one that I've seen it more often than Frenzy, and actually in a lot of ways I think Frenzy is a better film. I before I go into Marnie, I wanted to say really quickly about the kind of viewer identification. I do think that throughout Hitchcock's career he used a lot of like making the viewer identify with the victim and with the murderer, and kind of in some way highlighting the fact that the reason why the things that are happening on the screen are happening is because the viewer is there. It's because the audience wants them to happen, right? And I do think that Frenzy kind of draws that out the most, and particularly in the number of times he kind of forces you kind of in cahoots with the killer, because we know who the murderer is from like after the first 20 minutes, basically. And we keep on getting kind of paired with him, basically. So particularly like in the potato truck scene, which is a very funny sequence and very tense. And at the same time, you're like, why do I want this guy? I don't want him to get away, but I do, because if he doesn't get away, the film is over. The story's done, right? He gets caught and that's it. And I do think that Hitchcock is very, very good at forcing the audience to experience that. And particularly with Frenzy, to really draw into question, what are you enjoying? Like, what do you like so much about this? But yeah, when it comes to Marnie I've seen a lot more than Frenzy, but in some ways I do find it a more disturbing film than Frenzy, because it's this, the hero is horrible. First of all, the quote hero of the film. Marnie herself, I think, is fascinating. I think Tippi Hedren gives a fantastic performance. And actually, in this rewatch, I felt such empathy for her and for her characterization. And this just like, there's this sorrow at the end of the film where, you have come through all of this. There's been so much violence and suffering and confusion and pop Freudianism and everything. We get this whole revelation about what happened to her when she was a child. And one of her final lines is, I don't want to go to prison. I want to go home with you. Right. And that's her choice. The choice is between, this man who's brutalized her in a lot of ways and prison. And that's the choice that she has at that point. And at that point, she's like, well, life with him would be better than life in prison. And I don't know whether it's intentional on the part of the film, but it's a very sort of heavy ending in a lot of ways, and brilliant for that. But it's a very difficult film to watch. I agree.
Yeah, I think honestly, because of how the strength of the performances and how good the writing is, that's part of why it's so hard for me to watch.
Yeah. Tippi Hedren, like so much about Hitchcock and Hedren, et cetera, gets kind of overshadows her actual performances in the films that she made with him. And both films are fantastic. She is brilliant. And Marnie, like, most of the film is focused on her. It's about her. It's about like her performance throughout. And she does a brilliant job with it.
Yeah. So did you have any other, I guess, what am I trying to ask you? Like, you have your favorites with Hitchcock. Did anything emerge as like besides Frenzy, as like a new favorite, or maybe just something that you changed your mind about?
Nothing that I changed my mind about majorly. It was good to rewatch some of his very early films, some of his silent films that are not like thrillers particularly, but do definitely show the development of his style. And his interest is the thematics. There's a lot of talk about like how The Lodgers, the first true Hitchcock film, and I don't think that's true. Hitchcock made films from 1925 through 76, and all of those are true Hitchcock films. One of the ones that struck me more this time around, and I don't like the film overall. I don't think it's not good, but its technical aspects are fantastic, was Under Capricorn, which is kind of a mid-career film actually, and it's a costume drama that involves, it's set in Australia, that involves like Ingrid Bergman and Joseph Cotton. It's a good cast and everything. But it's very different in a lot of ways, particularly for the time period. But some of the technical aspects of it, the long takes, the use of the dolly shots, crane shots, etc., are just phenomenal. And like, even if you would almost ignore the plot and just be like, oh, look at what he's doing with the camera. This is so exciting. And that I really love. So it was good to rewatch that. I also rewatched Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is a screwball comedy that he made pretty much more or less as a favor to Carol Lombard because Carol Lombard really wanted to work with him. And it's a total screwball plot. Like you watch it, you're like, this Alfred Hitchcock directed this, and you can see the flourishes and everything in his style. But again, very entertaining. Just like watching it, I was like, this is charming. Like, I wish he had made more screwball comedies, to be honest. He became so identified with thrillers and murder and stuff like that. But every once in a while, you're like, but he makes funny films. Like, comedy is always a part of a Hitchcock film.
Oh yeah.
Even his most dour films have comedy in them.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think, is a fun movie to watch. Not so much because like, oh, does this give us any real insight into Hitchcock as a filmmaker? Yeah, it does in the sense that like he's still very capable of just making a really fun screwball comedy with some good actors. Carol Lombard is fantastic. I think it's Robert Montgomery is her co-lead, and I don't generally like him, but he's quite funny in this as well. So yeah, it was a good experience. I'm very glad that I did it. And it made me love Hitchcock even more, despite Topaz. Topaz is still the most boring fucking movie he ever made.
That is one that I did not watch. I have not seen that one.
Watch it for completion's sake. Like, if you're just like, I need to have seen all the Hitchcock films, watch it. But Christ almighty, like, I'm so glad, because like then he went on and made Frenzy and Family Plot. Like, thank Jesus that he did not end on Topaz.
I will say that in addition to starting my year with Frenzy, Hitchcock was my most watched director in 2024. I watched 10 of his films.
Yeah, good job. Cool.
So
also, this podcast made me watch Vertigo twice, which I'm still mad about.
You're welcome. Let's see. Something that what have I been watching? I don't even know.
What have you been watching?
So
Karen?
many things. So many things. So as I've been trying to get through the awards movies, there's been a few that have really stood out. So let's see. On a couple that are on streaming, in fact, on Netflix now. Will and Harper, I think you told me before we started recording that you watched that one as well. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I just watched that yesterday.
Yeah, it premiered at Sundance, and I actually tried to get a ticket at Sundance and wasn't able to. And then it was one of those things where I was like, I've got to see this movie, and I was hearing such great things about it. And then I just kind of kept not getting around to it. And finally, last week, I was just like, I've got to watch Will and Harper. I'm so excited for this. And so for anybody who doesn't know what this is, it's a documentary. It's Will Ferrell, who everybody knows Will Ferrell. Anyway, when he was working on Saturday Night Live, he was very good friends with one of the writers who became the head writer. And a few years ago, this person sent an email to some friends and family and announced that she was transitioning, and that she was actually a trans woman, and she would be changing her name to Harper. And so the documentary is basically Will and his friend Harper going on a road trip. And it's the first time that Will's actually spending time with this friend as she really is, not the person that he always thought she was. And and I think that, I mean, it's very sweet. It does ask some challenging questions, and it does kind of get into some things that I think a lot of people who experience this with their friends. I obviously don't know what it's like to be trans, but I have been near or with people as they've been going through transitions. And I think getting to see sort of the way that some things change, but most things don't, for people. They're still the same person. You just get to know them a little bit better and deeper now. I really liked that. And they kind of have this experience through a road trip where they're going and driving across the country and reconnecting with some of their old friends, from the show, and having some laughs and sharing some memories and talking about their experiences. And Will gets to ask some questions, and Harper gets to ask some questions, and Harper also gets the opportunity to kind of talk about some of her own fears. And yeah, I thought it was just such a very nice movie, and a very kind one, and one that, like, these are the types of stories that we need more of, because it shows you there shouldn't be anything scary about someone transitioning and someone kind of announcing themselves to the world. This is the way that people should be accepted when they make that decision, when they come to that point. And so I just thought it was such a nice, fun, funny movie, and just enjoyable. What do you think?
I really agree with you on that. One of the things that I liked was how Harper started talking about the fact that she's been friends with Will for all of these years, and it's like, but you've never actually met me.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that you've met this persona that I had, this character. I think that she keeps on referring to her dead name Andrew as a persona, right?
Yeah.
That so you've met Andrew, but you've not really met me, because and her whole thing is that this is all her life, in a lot of ways, has been a performance. She's been pretending at some level, being this cis man named Andrew. And I really liked kind of how they actually got into that and had that conversation. And also that it was very kind, because certainly the way that the documentary portrays them and portrays Will, he's kind of like, this is my friend, but also how do I engage with her? Is it exactly the same, or has it changed, or what does any of this mean? And it's kind of the both of them sort of navigating that very kindly and with a great deal of understanding.
Yeah,
I think. And I think one of the fears that a lot of people have, and certainly one of my fears about, I was thinking about, well, what if one of my friends said that they were transitioning, and I've not had that experience. And just there would be questions about, they'd be like, oh, are you still the same person? I guess at some level. And those fears of am I going to say something wrong? Am I not going to be understanding enough? Am I not going to respond correctly, be supportive enough, or be too supportive, right? And there are periods in the documentary actually where Will is almost too supportive, too concerned about her, wanting to protect her more because he knows the dangers that she can run into, but also she has to, as she says at one point, I think, that being with him gives her a certain a buffer, right? And she at one point says, this is not the true experience of being trans, right?
Yeah.
That because you don't have that, you have to live life without that necessarily. And yeah, I liked the way that the film kind of unpacked it and looked at it and treated everybody with a lot of empathy, and in a really positive and entertaining and funny way, and very affirming way.
Yeah. I was talking to one friend about it who said that he wished that there had been more focus on Harper and less on Will. And I was just like, but that's missing the point. I think the point isn't just about a person who has transitioned and is high profile and letting their high profile friends know. This is about how we respond to those people in our lives too. And
Mm-hmm.
the questions that we ask them, we ask ourselves, reflecting on the things that we may have said, or being more aware of how we talk about things. Like, there's a scene where they go to an NBA game and the governor's there. It's in Indiana. The governor's there. He wants to take pictures. he wants to meet Will Ferrell, and so they do all this, and the guy's super friendly. And right, like not long after this happens, there's a bill that was signed in Indiana, again, an anti-trans legislation, and Will is just devastated that he stood there and was in pictures with this person who was at the same time doing something that was so hurtful to his friend and people like his friend. So I think that that's actually the point, isn't just about a trans woman. It's about the people that love that trans woman and their experiences with accepting her and getting to know her too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that when you have someone high profile like Will Ferrell who's able to, it's to sort of and to highlight the fact that this is a friendship. They've known each other for like 27 years.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So these are, and so he is also going through something where he's like, this is someone that I've known for a very long time, been friends with
most of his
very,
professional career. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, like I think that he even says, like they met when Will Ferrell became a performer on Saturday Night Live. Like that was their first introduction to each other, right? Which was very much the beginning of definitely of his celebrity.
Yeah.
And navigating that and being like, okay, so this person that I've known for so long has had this in them forever, right? And I didn't know about it. And I think at one point Harper says, like, does she wish that she had transitioned earlier? And she said, well, I wouldn't be the person that I am. Like that, if she had been able to, or had the support, etc., she probably never would have become a writer on Saturday Night Live. She never would have met Will Ferrell. She never would have had the career that she had. And so it's this fascinating balance between, what do you regret? What don't you regret? How do you know a person? And then how do you navigate when something like this seems to change so fundamentally, but at the same time was always there, was always present, and you just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really positive and open, I think, and honest treatment of this. And it doesn't feel too Hollywoodized. It has a lot of humor in it, but doesn't seem like, we're going to paint a kind of a rosy picture of how wonderful everything is, or on the other side of how dangerous everything is. It has a lot of balance. Like there's a fantastic sequence in the bar in Oklahoma where there's all of this fear, but then it turns out to be this wonderful experience. And then there's kind of an opposite experience in Texas.
Yeah.
But in both cases, it's not like that there is this overhanging sense of like, how are people going to react? How safe is it to tell people or to be out as trans, to be a visibly trans person? And all of those things that, you kind of have to navigate. And basically, I like the fact that it keeps on reiterating that Harper was miserable before and was like close, suicidal. And that for all of the problems and for all of the fears that are connected to her coming out, it's far better to be the person that you actually are, than to continue to pretend. And I really liked that as well. And also just in terms of that, not just in terms of the trans experience, but in terms of the queer experience overall. Like it's better to be who you are, and deal with those terrors and deal with the possibilities of danger than it is to just remain in the closet for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. So that is streaming on Netflix, and I highly recommend it. And I'm not going to talk about these two because I did earlier in the year, but there's two other docs on Netflix right now that are kind of in the awards conversation that are definitely worth your time. And those are Daughters, which is about a prison program in Washington. And it's really great.
Ooh, yeah.
Tearjerker. It's so good. And then The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, which is about a video gamer who he had a chronic condition that he died young, which is common. But then after he died, his parents found out that he had this whole life that they never knew about. So it's very moving as well. So some really good documentaries to check out on Netflix. Okay, so what's something else you've been watching?
What's something else I've been watching? Well, I've seen Conclave twice.
Twice.
Twice. Once I went to the movie theater to see it, and then my parents wanted to watch it, and so we watched it when I was up there for Christmas. And I have to say, like, this, it's been given a lot of praise, and I absolutely agree with all of that praise. It is a fantastic film. I admittedly have not watched a ton of recent releases this year or the
Mhm.
past year. Uh just like I haven't been particularly interested. My focus has shifted in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of out of the loop in some sense. Like leaving Twitter, honestly, like I was just like, all right, I'm just done. I have no idea what's going on anymore. Um but with Conclave was one that kept on coming up, and I was just like, okay, this is a great cast. This is like sounds really interesting. And I love like political behind the scenes shit. I just love that stuff. I love the complicated nature of it. I love stories like that. And so Conclave just like hit so many wonderful things. It is such a good film. So well acted. It's I've said it before that it plays almost like a murder mystery.
Hmm.
And like it's and with the Ray Fiennes character, Lawrence, who's sort of the investigator, but it's in this like closed environment at the Vatican, um where this and the Sistine Chapel and everything, and they're debating who's going to be Pope, and there's all of these backroom shenanigans going on, and all of these things that are coming to light, and all of these different scandals, and it's so well done and so entertaining and really shockingly poignant and contemporary in a lot of ways. And you wouldn't think that the idea of like choosing a new pope would feel particularly important. But it really makes that like it gives you that sense of weightiness and of the ritual and of just like everything that goes into that, as well as some of the revelations that come out about the various candidates, including Lawrence himself, and then the ending, which is just so brilliant. And I didn't see coming, but I was halfway like something else is going on here, and it's so well done in so many different ways, and I'm very, very glad I saw. So like I really recommend that if anyone has not yet seen Conclave, check it out. It's streaming on Peacock right now,
Hmm.
actually. So if you have Peacock, you can watch it for free. You can also rent it. But
It's also
it's
still
a
playing in some
fantastic film.
theaters.
Yeah. Well, and it's in the Oscar conversation as well,
Yes.
it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's gonna get a Best Picture nomination for sure. Probably I'm gonna guess it's gonna get probably 7 or 8 nominations, but um yeah, it's I want to watch it again. I have so many that I'm trying to get through that I hadn't seen yet. So it's like that's gonna be one of the first ones that I revisit when I get to that point. But um it took me probably at least half of the movie to be like, okay, wait, so nobody was murdered. We're not we're not
it
actually doing a murder mystery.
it feels like a detective story. It really does. And you've even
Yeah.
got like the closed environment element where so Lawrence is like sending his you know assistant out to investigate things outside of the because they're all sequestered. So he's got to like send people out to like bring him information. It's so well done in that sense.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that totally works. It's just funny because I really thought like, so wait, are they gonna accidentally find out the Pope was murdered? Like they don't
He might
realize that
have
that's
been
what they're
though.
investigating. He might have been. We still don't know. But that's not what they're investigating. But it's yeah, the way it plays out. It's so good. So definitely watch that. Um we had this Christmas there were a lot of big releases. There's always some sort of Christmas Day release, but I feel like there were more than usual this time around. One of them was Nosferatu, which of course we're going to talk about next week, so I'm not going to get into that one here. But there were 3 other big movies that came out Christmas Day. Well, one of them should be much bigger, but anyway, one is A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan movie starring Timothy Chalamet. And I really wanted to like it. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was a bad movie, but I also didn't think it was great. It's very surface level. So much of it feels like it's just trying to get from one Bob Dylan song to the next. And it is all leading up. This is directed by James Mangold. And it is leading up to sort of the whole point of it is getting to when Bob Dylan went electric and everyone lost their minds over it, some good and some bad. So it's kind of a limited perspective biopic where it takes place over a couple of years, but in that I think it loses something by not being even more focused than that. I wish this had just really taken place in the summer of 1965 instead of in the 4 years from 61 to 65, because I think spanning those 4 years, because of the fact that they didn't take the time to really dive in deep into any particular moments in that time for him, it just feels very surface level. And this is not a movie that does any favors or kindness to any of the women in his life, including Monica Barbaro, who plays Joan Baez, and Elle Fanning, who plays the character in the movie is named Sylvie, but she's based on Susie, who was someone that Dylan very much loved. And I guess I was reading that at his request they changed her name, but it's basically her. So anyway, it's fine, but it's not a movie that I would say anybody should rush out and see. It's not that great. and I thought Timothée Chalamet sometimes did very, very good and sometimes just felt like he was doing kind of an impression. So yeah, but my biggest problem with it was that it felt like with someone like Bob Dylan, which he has some of the best like he's one of the best lyricists that we've had in the last 50, 60 years, and just really deep lyrics that speak to the soul. And this like if you don't know anything about Bob Dylan going in, I feel like you leave this movie feeling like he just kind of lucked into that and it just kind of happened, and he just happens to be really good with words instead of actually having experiences that would allow somebody to write something like this. So that was very frustrating. Yeah. So
none of what you're saying surprises me, to be totally honest.
It kind of didn't surprise me either, but it was still disappointing, so. And then I saw Baby Girl, which is another movie that has been getting a lot of discussion in the film community. This is Nicole Kidman. She stars as a CEO of a company, like a big tech company, and she ends up kind of in an affair, not kind of, she ends up in an affair with an intern played by Harris Dickinson. And the reason that she's drawn to him is because she just has she doesn't really even know quite what's wrong with her, but she has some sort of kink or fetish that she just can't figure out. And her husband certainly can't get there with her. And this young intern is able to push the right buttons. And yeah, I wanted to like this movie. I've heard so many things about it, and I went into it yes, okay, I'm going to watch this. And there are certain things about it that are very sexy. Yes, it's very steamy, but and this is directed by Helena Rain, who also did a movie a couple years ago called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And I felt like it, I've been trying to figure out how to put my finger on exactly what didn't work for me. And I think it's that I feel like it's trying to be salacious without actually saying some of the things that it purports to be trying to say. She's this high-powered CEO who ultimately wants to be dominated, is essentially, what you figure out pretty quickly about her. The problem is that once you get to know her as a person a little bit better, it's how did this woman ever become a successful CEO in the first place? And I think that's my ultimate problem is I just didn't buy her as this like strong woman who has this one area of her life where she wants to not have to be the strong person. And it didn't convince me. So it's still interesting. Okay. It's definitely, I would say it's worth watching. It just didn't quite land the way that I hoped it would.
I think that the problem in a lot of films like this is that there are just not enough weird people working on it. Like you got to be really weird, and I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah,
I mean that as like, you know, really just strange in some way, and very connected to weirdness.
Yeah, it felt
If you're not weird enough, it won't work.
Yeah, that's the thing. It felt like it was trying to give you this like insight into this very specific like kink area, but it just, because I don't believe who she's supposed to be on the outside of that, it's hard to be drawn into watching her, you know, on all fours drinking milk out of a saucer. You know, it's like, okay, I don't.
Sounds like just watch Secretary. Like,
yeah. So, anyways, that's Baby Girl. A lot of people love it, and a lot of people are seeing things that I don't. So maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for it. I don't know. But really, for me, it's not. Again, this is not a prude thing. This is not a like, ew, it's too much sex. It's not that. It's just that I didn't believe those scenes because of who she is when she's not with Harris Dickinson. So. Okay. Yeah. And then the other big Christmas Day release that I saw that I actually really liked a lot was The Fire Inside. This is directed by Rachel Morrison, who is the first woman that was nominated for cinematography. So when a cinematographer is making a movie, you know it's going to at least look great. And this one does. And it's about Clarissa Shields, who is, she's from Flint, Michigan. She was the first American woman to win an Olympic gold medal in boxing. Spoiler alert for history that happened 10 years ago. But anyway, the movie is about her, and it's, you know, it's a kind of a typical inspirational sports / boxing movie, but it goes farther than that. It goes into sort of what happens after that dream is realized. You know, some people, their lives are changed, other people, their lives are not changed. And this is about one of those people who their life is not immediately changed because this happens to her. So it's very, very good. Brian Tyree Henry plays her coach. He is also excellent. So it's a great movie. It's, again, inspirational sports movie, a lot of fun, and beautifully shot, and great performances from Ryan Destiny and Brian Tyree Henry. So definitely look for that one. That's still in theaters too.
Well, yeah, I've seen a lot of trailers for it. It's good to know that it's a good film. I didn't realize that Rachel Morrison directed it. That's great.
Mm-hmm. It's her first feature as a director. Cool. So yeah. What's something else you've been watching?
Well, I want to mention really quickly the two like animated films that I really really like, and I guess that while the Wallace and Gromit film, I think is still technically a 2024 film because it came out in 2024. Got released on Netflix now in 2025.
Yes.
You mentioned this before. I love Wallace and Gromit, first of all. I love everything that, like, you know, Aardman Studios does. This one I just enjoyed the crap out of. I was so excited to have Feathers McGraw return and going full Bond villain, like, and the evilness of that penguin. He is such an evil penguin. And I love the fact that he has just no facial expression whatsoever. People look at it, it's like, oh my God, it's Feathers McGraw. And yeah, it's just such a fantastically entertaining film, brilliantly animated as always, and just very clever. Like, you know, I like the fact that the Wallace and Gromit people are able to keep producing these really unique and entertaining stories. Like it's not just the quality of the animation, but the stories behind them and the warmth behind them. And I watched it last night, and it was an interesting film to have watched more or less directly after having seen Nosferatu, because I was like, okay, we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. But it's so much fun. It's so cute. And it says some interesting things about our dependence on automation and AI, and how, you know, the idea of machines can help us, but they can also be very dangerous for us, especially if they are like employed by evil masterminds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I really liked it.
I'm so glad you did. I love this movie too. And I actually got to interview Nick Park and Merlin Crossingham, who are
So cool.
the directors. Nick Park, of course, has been with the Wallace and Gromit series from the very beginning. So that was a very fun interview. And I will, if anybody's interested, I will link it in the show notes for this, because it was with Awards Watch that I did that. So just a quick little 10-minute interview. So you don't get a lot in when you only have 10 minutes, but it was still fun. We talked about the automation and the AI elements of the story, and kind of why they decided this is the first feature Wallace and Gromit feature since like 2005. So you know, why did they decide to do it was time to do another feature, that kind of thing. So it was a fun conversation. So yeah. I'm so glad you liked it.
I loved it.
Speaking of things that are on Netflix, it's on Netflix now.
Netflix does have some good stuff. I do have to say,
really
like,
do.
I go back and forth. I go back and forth with them, but yeah, they do have some good stuff. The other film that's also on Netflix, and that again is a film that I watched twice because my parents wanted to watch it, and I had recommended it, is That Christmas. And this, again, it's a much lighter film in a lot of ways. It's based on a number of Richard Curtis stories, and it's just a fun Christmas movie. Like, it's essentially about this very small town, Wellington-on-the-Sea, that loves Christmas, and it's all of these different occurrences with these different groups of this different family groups. There's a boy who is he's new in town. He just moved in. His mother is working all the time. She's a single mother. And he's got a crush on this girl who's one of a set of twins. And so there's all of this like interplay, and just very entertaining, very funny, very like charming and everything. And honestly, I will be absolutely honest on this. The reason why I watched it is because Rhys Darby voices one of the characters and is so fucking cute that I just about died. Mr. McNutt, I love you so much. Like, you don't even know. But it really is a very entertaining and a very adorable movie. And I again recommend it if you're still looking for some nice Christmas vibes. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I have not. I meant to watch it and I just didn't get around to it. So I will though.
It's adorbs, and it's a great voice cast.
Nice. Gosh, there's so many things, but we're running out of time. But one other film that I will mention that I saw just yesterday is The Last Showgirl, which stars Pamela Anderson. She's been getting a lot of buzz for this movie. It's directed by Gia Coppola, who is, you know, very well known because she is the granddaughter of Francis Ford Coppola. And so Pamela Anderson plays a dancer. She's a Las Vegas showgirl, and she's been with this particular show since the beginning, like since the 80s. And it's closing because it's very much, you know, Vegas has kind of moved past these types of shows, and it's a relic of the past. And so this is the final couple of weeks before the show ends. And so you have Pamela is Shelley, who is basically trying to come to grips with that, trying to figure out what's next for her, and also trying to connect with some people that either have been part of this life or have not, like how her involvement in this dream basically has affected some of her relationships too. So it's I wanted to like this more than I did. It's only about an hour and a half, so it's not a long movie, and I think that's good. But I think that the performances are great, especially Anderson. She's fantastic. And then Jamie Lee Curtis plays another former showgirl who is addicted to gambling, and she's an alcoholic, and her life is just a complete disaster. And she's not in it a lot, but whenever she does pop up, she's really powerful, and just kind of seeing sort of what really becomes of some of these people who are never able to transition into any other type of a career. And it's sort of this kind of bleak look at what could happen to Shelley if she doesn't figure something out in these next couple of weeks, Dave Bautista is in it too. I think he's underrated as an actor. I think he's done a lot of good funny comedies, but I think he's actually, he's not just a funny guy. Like there's some depth to him. He's very good. And some other familiar faces pop up here and there. But I think where I wish that the movie would have just done a little bit more was really giving us just either some other reason to root for Shelley or some reason to just look at her like, wow, you really threw away so much. And I think it tries to kind of do a little bit of both, but it doesn't do either one as deeply as it could. So it feels, it's another one that feels like it just kind of scratches the surface. And by the end of it, I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to be rooting for her or pitying her or just being like, well, you made your bed, like I'm not really totally sure how I'm supposed to feel about her when all is said and done. But I think that the performances are good enough, and some of the questions that do get asked, I think are important. And so it's definitely worth your time. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's one that I told you before we started, that I've been interested in seeing. Like I've seen the trailers for it, and just seeing what Pamela Anderson can do, I think is something that really intrigues me.
Yeah. I really do hope that this opens new doors for her. It's interesting to see this come out in the same year as The Substance, which they're very different movies. They are not at all the same, but it deals with, in both cases, they deal with some very similar themes. And in both cases, you have these actresses who are the leads of these movies who, in their glory day, they were sex symbols. They were, and they were like looked at as the pinnacle of beauty and glamour or whatever. And, but they were never treated, and to me, a little bit more, but they were never treated as seriously as they should have been. They weren't taken very seriously as people, as humans. And so getting to see them come back in these roles that are very specifically about the way these industries just destroy women, and seeing the way each of them handle that journey, that would be an interesting double feature, actually.
I feel like we see these kinds of films. They're like periods where we see these kinds of films. Some of it even goes back to stuff like Sunset Boulevard, right? Where you get these the old guard kind of coming back, and it's always about women, and it's about youth, and it's about what you've lost and all of that. And there is this part of me that's just like, when do we get past this? When do we get to move past it? And I think The Substance was a brilliant film. But I really do want there to be more heeding of this. And for Hollywood and someone, maybe it's just this hope that Hollywood culture will change, and it's just not going to. But at some point, it's like, when do we talk about this so much? We see films about it. We have articles about it. We have books about it. When do we finally get past this obsession with youth? And when do we finally get to see women more valued at every stage? Not just older women, right? Younger women as well. Younger women not being treated like pieces of meat.
Yeah.
At what point are we actually going to get past that, I guess? And we have in some ways, I think, and we haven't in others. Definitely things have changed since the 1980s and the 1990s. But, when it's that, right. It's that kind of why are we still doing this feeling?
Yeah.
which is also part of just the feminist movement generally. Is like, why are we still having these fights? Why are we still having these battles? Why is it still the same fucking thing that it was in the 1960s?
Hmm.
And it is and it isn't. So
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And that's where I say, like, it's interesting to watch this in the same year as The Substance. I think that The Substance actually calls that out more and does a good job of kind of really pointing out this is an industry-wide problem. I feel like The Last Showgirl is a lot more insular. It's not really about this industry. It's about this particular woman who has been kind of trapped in it. Mostly of her own choice, but still, it's about her and how everything has kind of moved on around her, and she didn't keep up with it, basically. So, yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention?
Not really. I mean, The Substance was another one that which is just such a good film in so many ways. I hesitate to recommend it to people sometimes because I'm like, look, it's great, but also it's really gross.
Mm-hmm.
And there were points in that film, I think I've mentioned this before. There were points in that film where I was like, I don't want to be this close to anyone ever. Like, not at all. I do not. Please stop. Like, please and then that's part of the point. Like, you're supposed to be uncomfortable, right? But at the same time, I'm like, get away. Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
And not even like in some of the gross sections, just like the close-ups, like the how tightly close I am to Dennis Quaid in certain scenes. I'm like, I don't want that. Like,
I have not eaten shrimp since I saw that movie.
Oh God, it's just so disgusting. Yeah. And I also will say, and we've talked about this before, so I won't go into it, but I this year, my second most watched director was actually Taika Waititi.
Huh.
And this was the year that I finally saw Boy for the first time, and that film still like just lives in my soul. And I'm very much looking forward to, I think it's the next film that he should have coming out would be Kira and the Sun Moon. And I'm very excited about whatever that is going to be.
Yeah. I'm so excited too. Let's see. So I'm just going to run through a list of a couple of movies that I've seen recently without going too much into them. Just kind of a quick, because like I said, it's been a lot. I saw The Apprentice, which is the Donald Trump movie, Donald Trump and Roy Cohn, with Sebastian Stan, which I thought, oh gosh, that's really generous casting, but he made it work. I was really surprised. I liked the movie a lot more than I thought I would. It's early days. It's the 70s into the 80s of Donald Trump and how kind of Roy Cohn had so much to do with who he became. So I think that might be on streaming. No, it's available for rent so far, but anyway, like I said, it's better than I thought it would be. And I think the biggest trouble I had with it was just like, this is still Donald Trump, and I don't want to see him in any sort of a positive light, which it's not. It really is done like a villain origin story more than a biopic, which I thought was a smart way to do it. And there were some early scenes where I was just like, why are we trying to show things that are sympathetic? Like, what are we doing here? Why are you trying to make me feel bad for this guy? And then I realized, when you actually step back and you can look at it as a whole, what's really happening is that it's showing you moments where he had the opportunity to actually become a good person or choose a different path. And every single time he did not choose that. And that is part of what made the monster that we know today. So, yeah. So it was surprisingly good, just difficult time to watch it. So, and then a movie called September 5, which I think is coming to theater. I'm totally confused about some of these release dates. I don't know if it's out already or if it's coming. But it's about, so it takes place September 5th, 1972, which was during the Munich Olympics when the Israeli athletes were taken by a terrorist group. And, but it's not about the athletes and it's not about the terrorists. It's about the ABC sports broadcast team that brought the coverage live, and really how that changed the way we consume live events on the news. And so in that, I thought it was really well done. So great performances in that one too. There's a Brazilian film. It's on the short list for the Academy Awards. It's called I'm Still Here. And this is a true story. It's about Eunice Paiva, whose husband Rubens was a former congressman in Brazil. And in the 1970s, he was taken by the military and he never came home. And so she spent decades trying to find out the truth about what really happened to him. And they had 5 kids together, and this completely, obviously, upset their whole lives. And this is based on a book which was written by one of their children. So heart-wrenching, very difficult, but really, really well done. And Fernanda Torres is just such a force in that movie. And then I think that's a good place to stop. I've seen a lot, but yeah, those are some of the big ones that I've watched in the last week or two. So
Wow.
yeah. So anything that you're looking forward to in 2025, movie wise?
There are a few. Yes, actually. So one of them is which actually was released in 2024, but I haven't had a chance to see it yet, is Queer, which is the new Luca Guadagnino film that's based. I mean, Jesus Christ, this is a Luca Guadagnino film based on a William S. Burroughs novel and starring Daniel Craig. Like, please, I'm gonna see this movie. I just want to see how weird it is, to be totally honest. Like, and I am. It has gotten some very good responses, and I'm very excited to see it. One of the others is, again, I think it's technically a 2024 release, but every time an Almodovar film comes out, I'm like, why has this not been given to me? Like, why has someone not just given this movie to me? But I believe this is his first totally English language feature film. And stars Tilda Swinton and Juliana Moore. And this is The Room Next Door, which again has gotten some great responses, has gotten a lot of really positive buzz, which doesn't surprise me. But again, Almodovar, I'm pretty much always there. And finally, the one that I had not heard about until I saw a trailer for it for Nosferatu, but The Monkey, which is Osgood Perkins' latest film. And first of all, I love the Black Coat's daughter, Hansel and, or what's it called, Hansel and Gretel or something like that. I was not a fan of, but I love his aesthetics, and I think that he's a really fascinating filmmaker. So I'm very interested to see what he does. But not only is this directed and written by Osgood Perkins, it's based on a Stephen King story, and it was produced by James Wan. And all of that together, and it's about an evil monkey toy. Like, all of that just makes me go like, this could be terrible. It could be amazing, but I know it's going to be fucked up. I know it's going to be weird, and I badly want to see this movie. At first I was like, oh, this is kind of stupid. And then I was like, oh, Osgood Perkins. I was like, James Wan. Oh, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. You have me right there. So yeah, I'm excited about those.
Nice.
I want weirder movies. That's what I want. I want weird.
I think you're gonna get your wish.
I truly expect to be honest.
I have a couple for this year too. So one of them is Mickey 17, which is the new Bong Joon-ho movie. That's coming in March, and this has had a couple of release dates, so it's been pushed back a few times, but it's Robert Pattinson is in it, Naomi Ackie, Stephen Yeun, Toni Collette. So it looks like a fun cast, and it's basically about I'm not even totally sure what it's about. I know it has to do with like the earth is obviously having problems, and there's cloning, and Mickey 17 is the 17th Mickey. And it looks really funny, and I'm just very excited about that. It's about time that we get a new Bong Joon-ho movie. And then let's see what else. We also this year we're getting the final Conjuring movie, which
Oh, that's right.
yeah, they wrapped principal photography for it a month or two ago. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Um, Obviously I'm excited for the new Mission Impossible. I'll never not be excited, even though I was disappointed by the last one. I still have hope for the new one. Although based on something that happened in Dead Reckoning, I'm a little bit worried. So we'll see. And then I'm excited for 28 Years Later. I loved 28 Days Later. I thought it was great. And I'm excited to revisit that world. So there's that one. And then Paul Feig has a new movie coming out this year too.
Ooh, does he? I didn't know that.
He does. It's called The Housemaid, and it is a thriller about a woman who takes a job as a housemaid for a rich couple. That's all I know about it. It's based on a book, apparently. But it's Paul Feig, and I'm looking forward to that. So those are a couple of mine.
Cool. Those all sound good. Yeah, there's some good stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Interesting, intriguing.
Yes. We'll see how it all goes. Because, the thing that's always tricky, and my other podcast, we're doing a most anticipated of 2025 episode. And the thing that's always tricky is sometimes release dates get shifted, but also you get so excited about a movie and then you finally see it and you're like, oh, this is not great. But then other times you may not be expecting a movie to be good and then it turns out to be your favorite thing. So it can go both ways.
I have to say, having seeing the trailers before Nosferatu, I kept on having whiplash. I was just like, oh, no. There's like, oh, maybe. It was very up and down because I was just like, that doesn't sound. Oh, actually, no, yeah. I don't think so. Never mind. I know that Lee Winnell has a film coming out about Wolfman.
Yeah, it comes out next week.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that. Given what he did with Invisible Man, I'm intrigued by it. The trailer, I was a little bit like, okay, whatever. But if I can see potential, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the trailer for Invisible Man thinking, okay, that looks fun. But then I saw it and I was like, whoa, that's actually really good. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of in between. Like when I saw the trailer, I was like, meh. And then it was like from the director of Invisible Man. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Tell me more.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for now that's going to wrap things up. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
All right. As we did mention, next week we are going to be talking about Nosferatu. So we're going to do our whole episode about that movie specifically. It's going to be great. But before we get to next week, let's take a moment to thank our patrons for helping keep the show going. Because of you, we get to do what we do, and we really do appreciate you. And our patrons are Abby, Ollie, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather. We have a new patron, Holly. Hi, Holly. James, Judy, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Steve, and Sharon. If you would like to join us and become a patron too, you can go to patreon.com/citizendame and sign up. And we are going to be launching a new bonus series very soon. So by the time you're listening to this, you can vote on what that will be. So be sure to go and do that. You can also support us with our Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/citizendame. And then there's lots of ways that you can follow along in what we're doing. We do have our website, citizendamepod.com, and we do have some new stuff coming there. I will be going to Sundance this year, but not for Citizen Dame. So I'm going to still do a little bit of coverage, but it's not going to be like a lot like in the last couple of years because I'm going for a different site. But still a few things of what I'm looking forward to with Citizen Dame and some new stuff that's coming in the new year too. So look for that. And then if you want to contact us, you can reach us by email, citizendamepod@gmail.com. And you can find us on social media on Instagram, Blue Sky. We are at Citizen Dame Pod. And on Letterboxd, we are at Citizen Dame. You can also find us individually. Lauren, where are you?
I am on Instagram and Letterboxd at LH Business.
And I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, man, words are hard, and Blue Sky at Karen M. Peterson. So that's going to wrap things up for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
And I'll just leave you with one thing that I think this movie is imparting is in those moments when we don't think we're smart enough or pretty enough or skinny enough or successful enough or basically just not enough. I had a woman say to me, just know you will never be enough, but you can know the value of your worth if you just put down the measuring stick. And so today, I celebrate this as a marker of my wholeness and of the love that is driving me and for the gift of doing something I love and being reminded that I do belong. Thank you so much.